Love that cat. Love it.
The unnamed cat of
The
OpenCV.
That's right. Maybe that'll end up being the name.
The unnamed cat. All right, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to OpenCV Weekly. I'm Satya Malik, CEO of OpenCV. Our guest this week is Andrew Logan, creator of Helicopters of DC. They're using crowdsourced images and computer vision to identify helicopters over the nation's capital. That's fascinating. But
Mhm.
first, with me, as always, is Phil Nelson, Director of Content and Creative at OpenCV. Phil produces the show, and if anything goes wrong, it's his fault.
This is completely accurate. Yes, folks, it is me once again, the co-host with the co-most, the second banana who is second to none, your plus one and only. I'm here to remind you of a few things we do every single week here on OpenCV Weekly. The first of which is a special giveaway to you in the audience. If you're in the Zoom chat here later in the show, you'll have a chance to win the OpenCV course of your choosing. Stay tuned for that. We're also taking Q&A from you in the audience. Use the little Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of the screen at any time to ask your question, or just ask it in the comments section wherever you're watching the show. Also, happy birthday, Everett. Satya?
Well, welcome, Andrew. The show is all yours.
All right. Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me today. Again,
Mm-hmm.
my name's Andrew Logan. I run Helicopters of DC, largely on Twitter. So this project kind of started from a mystery. Helicopters flying over your head late at night, difficult to find historical information the next morning, and a lot of people on Twitter asking the same questions and unable to identify a helicopter by looking at it. So if you don't know about the DC region, we have a pretty fraught history with helicopters, especially recently. This is the George Floyd protest where
Mm-hmm.
the Army National Guard used a military rotor wash technique on peaceful protesters, which, is not so cool, in my opinion.
Unconscionable. Unconscionable.
And just to give another example, lawmakers are looking for any way they can to correlate helicopter activity to noise complaints. And they're currently trialing a private system that takes noise complaints away from the FAA, believe it or not, to give it
Wow.
to a private company in the hopes that they can figure out who is flying over them and when. So we started this project in humble beginnings. We were trying to just help people make sense of helicopters. So here's helicopter anatomy for you. And what makes this uniquely possible in the DC area is that most helicopters can be tied from operator to type in a one-to-one fashion, or at least if you figure out the type, you're between one and two different operators, possibly. So the first thing we look at is blades on the main rotor. Now, this will be difficult without a photo because they're moving pretty fast. Between 2 and 5 blades on these main rotors, typically. There are some of the heavy lift helicopters you see on the West Coast fighting fires or lifting air conditioners can have 6 blades. And the second thing is landing gear configuration. So this can be skis or wheels and 2 different types of tricycle wheels, we would say. 2 in the front, 1 in the back, or 1 in the front, 2 in the back. I'm just giving you some ideas here when you think about human vision and what we're going to talk about with computer vision later.
Yeah.
The last thing being tail fin shape. So we get sometimes just an upswept tail in the back. Sometimes it has this lower fin as seen in the diagram. And then 2 other types that I think are really uniquely useful in computer vision are the fenestron, seen here on the left. This is a Coast Guard helicopter. They're in the DC region. They try to stop incursions of small planes into the area. And then
I've
this
definitely
is
flown one of those in Grand Theft Auto 5 online for sure.
Yeah, and okay, so this is the fenestron, and it's an enclosed tail rotor blade that's obviously good for safety if you're walking behind the helicopter, and a lot of these are used in medivacs where they load in patients through the back, actually under the tail rotor boom, so it's really important. But it also does cut down on noise quite a bit. And then the other is cuts down on noise a lot. I actually think when it's flying over you, it sounds like one of those. Do you remember the vuvuzelas from the South American?
Definitely.
South African World Cup. Kind of a low droney tone. This actually relies on the Kawanda effect, which is the same thing that lets you balance a ping pong ball on the end of a hairdryer, which is really interesting. So that's called a NOTAR system, if you want to look that up. So we started
already learning so much this morning.
I know. I want to teach you guys, the whole helicopter.
You've quadrupled my understanding of helicopters already.
Yeah, I mean, starting from the number of blades, I did not even know that there are 5-bladed helicopters.
Hey, I'll take you on another tangent briefly. I was trying to do a helicopter lesson last week. It got canceled for weather, but they made me read part of the FAA manual, and I learned so much. Some of the main rotors go clockwise, and some of them go counterclockwise. And when you see a craft circling, you could probably figure out from the pattern of the circle which rotation they have, because it makes it a lot easier to just kind of cruise in a circle. Anyway, this is the wide world of ADS-B bots, which is where we started. If you've been to the famous Elon jet on Twitter, then you're familiar with ADS-B bots. And if you're curious about aviation in your area, you should check out Advisory Circular. These are in many of the metropolitan areas, and they're run by, or at least the code is written by, a very smart guy, John Wiseman, who also has tracked the FBI surveillance planes in a Vice piece that's worth checking out if you're...
I believe I read that article.
Very cool. So this was a very basic attempt to try to onboard some of the easy-to-get information. And if you're interested in flight tracking, I highly recommend you start with globe.adsbexchange.com and not anything else, because these operators, not only do they filter the military often in just kind of the interest of, they don't think anybody's interested in that, which is fascinating. But the other thing they do is they sell exclusions. So Elon Musk can pay $1,000 a year to all of these services, I assume he will, to take his data off of their platform, and ADS-B Exchange does not do that. Okay. So sort
of like how the Pope used to sell and still does sell indulgences.
Yeah. Yes, a bribe, if you will. Right. Here's what we typically get in the DC area in the Triangle, which is a medical news gathering, the police agencies, including the Park Police. And then this was for, I was talking about military ghost helicopters. So these are ghost helicopters. Sometimes they turn on their transponder. We don't know why. It doesn't seem to be the times when you would expect them to. One of the examples I cite is that they do flyovers at Arlington Cemetery. Actually, they're going to do one in about an hour. If you want to look at globe.adsbexchange.com, you probably won't see it because they have an exclusion under the Code of Federal Regulations for sensitive government flights of national law enforcement and intelligence, but they don't seem to apply it in a consistent way, to say the least. So what we did, also picking the low-hanging fruit, we looked at the president's daily schedule, and you could scrape this, but they actually just let you download a CSV, so we did that, and we, parse for terms like Joint Base Andrews, where the helicopters fly to, and then we convert these into cron jobs, if you're familiar with Linux, that let you fire tweets later in the day. So that's how we got automated presidential arrivals and departures.
Wow. Yeah, let's just
warn us,
for the audience. Yeah,
just warn us when you are going into the illegal stuff, so that we can take it out of the recorded version.
I swear there's computer vision here too, by the way. But and I cut the slides about the First Amendment, but everything we do is protected under the First Amendment in my understanding, and
all right.
I've got to call my lawyer after this.
I agree.
But
It seems like it must be.
It should be above
yes.
board.
Yeah.
There was also, and I'll say because you asked, there's a presentation by the National Geospatial Programs Office where they talk about how they redact data from public data sets. And they say if something is readily observable or public information, it's really
Right.
unlikely to reduce vulnerabilities to withhold
Yeah.
that from the public. So,
Right.
that certainly
Absolutely.
everything we do is in that category.
Yeah.
Another thing that we do is we capture helicopter radio from DCA Tower. Again, public. This is the FCC interception and divulgence rules. And we use an excellent open source app, RTL SDR Airband. RTL SDRs are software defined radios that run on USB. You can use them on a Raspberry Pi. Not only do they let you get that transponder information, which is public, but they could also let you get AM band radio, such as aircraft towers in this case. So
could you talk a little bit about the difference between software-defined radios and like the classic old-time radios?
Well, the main thing is that many of these have very expanded range in that you can tune anything from a few megahertz to up into the gigahertz range of Wi-Fi or 9. I think it's 9 gigahertz is. I have the spectrum allocation over here in front of me. Oh yeah, you can tune satellites, which are definitely I'm looking at 27 gigahertz right now. Somebody was pulling down telemetry from SpaceX satellites with an RTL SDR and a dish, obviously. So the dynamics of what you can do, and you can also tune into NOAA weather satellites, for example. Google RTL SDR. If you're a hacker, you will find a wealth of projects for the rest of the year and on here. But anyway, we use this to separate it into individual radio calls, and we upload those to an FTP server and tweet them from a sub account. It's called UFOs of DC. A little tongue in cheek here, but it's UFOs because they're unidentified when they come to us, but you get to identify them. And in this case, someone did, tagging the main account, the call sign of the craft, waypoints, routes, and zones that they mentioned. And then the main account generates a map of the described features, gives you information about the operator based on that call sign, and attaches the original radio call to that. So it creates a video that can become a primary source. So you're giving citizen journalists a great tool to generate a story from a really difficult to understand data set. And when you listen to these radio calls, it takes a keen ear. We're trying to get more people to do it. Certainly, if you're interested in radio, go to UFOs of DC. You'll find plenty to work on there, and we're happy to have you. But the part that's going to lead us to computer vision is Copter Spotter. So this is a platform for DC residents to self-report helicopters over their location. And they do this with a couple key pieces of data: the time, date, and geolocation that Twitter gives us, and either a photo, a video, or the type of helicopter if they know it. So here's a typical copter spot. Very nice, actually, video in this case, a still frame of it. And he did note the type in this as well. So our bot would pick this up and retweet it, giving you a map of where it was seen, a custom icon based on that operator, and probable operators. In this case, so I had said that you can usually tie the type of helicopter to the operator in a pretty good one-to-one way in the DC area. The Black Hawk helicopter is the exception, and we will talk about that in computer vision for sure. But in this case, knowing nothing else, it could be Army, National Guard, FBI, I say possibly presidential, but also actually fringe cases of Navy and Coast Guard as well. So this one does not seem like we're enlightening anyone too much with a Black Hawk helicopter.
So I have a little question here, which is how many different kinds of helicopters on a given day are you likely to see over DC?
On a given day, maybe 5 or 6. We have 19 different classes in the data set for computer vision. And I thought, I could have sworn your question, you really buried the lead on this one, was going to be, what is this helicopter carrying?
If I don't ask, then I don't have to know.
Yeah, they're actually auxiliary fuel tanks, but I'm very shocked that wasn't what popped out to you about that.
It's called plausible deniability, Andrew.
Yeah. So we get people to do this by making it a game, and obviously Washingtonians are very competitive. The leaderboard shows us that, and
wow.
We joke, though maybe it's a good idea, that one day this could be tradable as copter coin, a pseudo-currency that you can only earn by taking photos of helicopters.
See, I think that only works if maybe you like physically mint them out of blades or something.
Well,
so
yeah.
Quick question about these numbers: is each one of those points is just one successful identification, or?
It's either one or two. So we've been giving one for a spot and one for a photo if you attach a photo or multimedia.
So two at most per interaction.
Yeah, and then the radio spots are two because we believe that takes a little more work, and we kind of want to incentivize people. And recently we had a National Night Out, which is a night where all of the police community engage with their communities, and we wanted to get I reached out to all the police agencies and asked, where's your helicopter going to be? I'm just curious, I want to come see it. And only one told me. So I said, well, we're going to engage surge scoring tonight. So if you see a police helicopter, it's 10 points. And we got a lot of spots that night. So gamifying this definitely works.
I have a capture idea for you.
Yeah.
What you should do is, when they try to register for the account, you should ask them to identify a few helicopters. And then, also have a few of them which you don't know for sure. And, then you will know what it is based on the number of votes.
Yeah, I have a slide coming up on human intelligence versus computer intelligence where I basically do just that. So it's interesting you bring that up. One of the things that we did with this data is my colleague Sam Reese built this copter spotter map, and you can see he's put a ton of work into this. It lets you filter by time, date, the specific operators, and obviously geolocation. And look at how great these bubbles look. This is a new feature. It used to just be like Dippin' Dots ice cream on there, and now
it's like what are you using Mapbox here?
Mapbox, yeah.
Good old shout out to Mapbox, one of the still extant alternatives to Google Maps. It's you can actually embed it in your stuff without giving everybody's information to Google forever. It's nice.
Yeah, and I think Sam was telling me it's about 50,000 calls you get for free, and we're like nowhere near that right now. But please, everybody, map.copterspotter.com. Sam has told me he would love to have some help with this. So if you're a front-end web developer, I wouldn't be surprised to have a couple in the audience, and you're interested in, helicopters, aviation, open data, familiar with TypeScript or React, or just interested, he'd love to, have another person on the team. We're interested in, bringing that radio data onto the map, bringing that educational data to the map, and maybe web camera interface for inference at some point would be really awesome too. So here's his Samuel C. Reese on Twitter. You can reach out to him or reach out to me at the end of the presentation if you're interested.
Yeah, tell him OpenCV sent you.
Yeah. So obviously this took off. We got 10,000 spots in 2021, and we're on track to slightly beat that this year, I think. At the top here, you could see what would normally be available with ADS-B data, but this is all our data, but these are the operators you would get on ADS-B. The gray in the middle is the unknowns after we looked at all the photos and tried to correlate the photos to types. There were still, pictures of leaves, night photos, things that we couldn't figure out. And then 50% of our data is military aircraft that pretty much hadn't been documented in any other way, I believe, including by the FAA. So, we talk about these noise complaint systems, and really, we have the data, which is pretty awesome being a community-based venture.
Yeah.
Quick. if there is a noise complaint, is it that um, they shouldn't have been flying and they are violating the law by flying over? Even the government agencies are violating the law?
No, that's definitely not why. What they would like to look at doing, I believe, is adjusting paths, routes
The routes.
around the city to avoid basically people who complain a lot. But
because it's noisy in the system, they have to, somebody has to answer the phone or review those messages and stuff. Yeah.
well, it's actually done through a web form now. You have a couple options, but a web form or a hotline. But yes, no one is legally at fault in this case. Yeah, it's just kind of something that people have been complaining to lawmakers about for so long that, some definitely constituents who are fundraising, I'm sure, have rang the bell on.
I bet.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's more about that. They recently, DC's representative Eleanor Holmes Norton also proposed an adjustment to a law that would require helicopter operators to operate at the maximum level or ceiling.
The ceiling,
which I don't think is going to work. One of the reasons I've heard cited for this is that they want to separate the operators so that we know that medivacs are up here and all the military aircraft can be down here. And so it could minimize collisions that way. Now, if you turn on your transponder, then the flights can see each other and you could minimize conflicts that way. But I've heard, it's anecdotal, but I've heard from pilots that there have been close calls involving these military aircrafts that have their transponder off. So, I mean, that shouldn't surprise anyone when you see the volume of aircraft that are traveling around the DC area without these transponders, which are designed for flight safety.
Okay. That's why they exist, basically.
Yes. Okay, so here is our, thousands of photos of helicopters shot from the user's perspective. Obviously, we're going to do computer vision. And here's an example. These are V-22 Osprey. Maybe they're technically not a helicopter, depending on what configuration they're in, but we count them, and the computer vision is able to identify it with a 73.9% confidence. This was, again, with 19 operators. And so here is this very unscientific experiment I ran where I gave our Twitter audience 3 of our conventional educational options here. And I said, here's a grainy night photo. What do you think it is based on these charts? And they actually got it right with a 87.5% confidence. Yeah. But, let's say there's probably several expert copter spotters in our midst. But I think that's pretty representative. And then
it seems like the ones that really know this shit really, really know this shit.
Well,
is that your experience?
I've looked at thousands and thousands of photos of helicopters, so you definitely get pretty good at it. So the computer vision recognized this same spot with an 85% confidence, slightly lower confidence, but instead of 3 operators, it was looking at 19 operators, or types in this case. Yeah. So pretty impressive on that one. It's hit or miss. We're trying to nail down exactly what the biggest issues are, and I'll get to that. But quickly, I want to talk about RoboFlow. Obviously, had Joseph on recently.
Yep.
Say their web-based annotation tool.
Filthy Iowan.
I know. I went to school in Ohio, and I love people from the Midwest. They're just like, it's so easy to talk to people. So hi Midwest, everybody, reach out to me.
Shout out
us with our web dev.
Except for Iowa.
So RoboFlow, the first thing I'll say is their web-based annotation tool is so much better than anything I've experienced. I looked at doing this very early with VOT, and I was like, this is not going to be possible. I can't do thousands of photos with this tool. It's too bad. The way that it can divide videos into frames so quickly, huge tool. API photo uploads has been enormous for us. Obviously, I don't want to be doing manual uploads of every Twitter photo, so it just shoots off into our data set, and you can tell it if you want it in the train, valid, test, split. It allows for collaboration, division of labor. Obviously, if you have a community-based project, that's big too. Automated augmentations, I'm Photoshop savvy, but I'd rather let them do it and tell me what I probably should be doing, and we'll get to that in a sec. And we use their platform to train and deploy our model, which is really fantastic. And we're on the RoboFlow universe, so you can go on and use our data set and fork it for your own needs, and I look forward to seeing all of your helicopter identifying.
So all this
apps.
data set is on RoboFlow universe already?
Yes, it is.
Oh, nice. What about the models? Do you have the model also available?
It was trained on RoboFlow's platform, so you can work with the model on there as well. I haven't worked with it as an outsider as much, so I can't tell you what all the capabilities are there, but it is available, certainly.
Yeah, and if folks out there want to give this a try, they can sign up for RoboFlow at roboflow.com/OpenCV. Make sure we get those promotional credits.
Love it.
We are thinking of doing a competition with RoboFlow at some point next year, and one option could be that some of these very interesting data sets we produce, the competition would be that you beat the author of the data set in creating a model that is of higher accuracy, right?
That would be pretty fun.
So
I like that idea. And folks, to get the newest information on any competition with OpenCV, the best way to do that is to go to opencv.org/subscribe and sign up for the OpenCV newsletter, which goes out every Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. So we are going to announce a new competition sometime early next week, and we are just there are these last minute kinks that we are ironing out, and after that we'll launch the competition.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot going on here in Q4 with OpenCV. It's going to be fun.
So I already see a question I want to take right now, which is, did you annotate them manually? And yes, me and Sam did most of them manually until we trained it.
Prashin. Thank you, Prashin.
Yeah, and then again, there's an automatic tool in RoboFlow that will do the box and annotation for you automatically based on your model that's been trained. And wow. Once you get that going, you can really start flowing through your data like so fast. You're just checking for errors pretty much at that point. So awesome. Highly recommend that feature. So here are a couple of the augmentations that we do. The obvious one, horizontal, left is right, right is left. For a helicopter, generally, there are certain features like this helicopter has a winch on one side, but I think the basic shape applies either direction. Rotation, in the latest one, we're plus or minus 10, not percent, but degrees. And we increased this from plus or minus 2. And I don't know, we didn't get as great a result as we wanted. So this is flexible. We might be tuning this in. And then saturation and exposure, obviously, with time of day and variance in camera phone technology. We see a lot of photos that look like the extremes of these on either end.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So those are some examples of that. What we did in our most recent one is add some false positive information. So by all means, we're not trying to identify every object in the sky, but frequently there's a bird or a plane or sometimes a bug that is, also in a picture with a helicopter, or
the Mothman, or in some other cryptid.
Yes, depending on how much you travel towards West Virginia, it could be the Mothman for sure. And so we added these, and I also suspect that this could have been part of why our most recent training, the mean average precision did not improve as much as we would have expected from what we added, but we added a couple classes that were very underrepresented because they're just to represent false positives. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that pulled down our precision slightly. So here's something we want to look at, and I really thank you guys for having me on the show because it's helped me distill my thoughts about what needs to happen next with this data set. We talked about the H60 and the varying H60s. What we started with here was the H60 class of Blackhawk, the H60 with those auxiliary fuel tanks, because it's often, I mean, it doesn't tell us much about the operator. I mean, actually, I think it is Army or National Guard, so it narrows it. But this is such a different shape that I thought that this would come up a lot. It turns out a lot of these ring up as H60s as well, so it may not be as sensitive to these fuel tanks as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then the VH60N, which is an H60, but only in a different livery. So the interior is different on these, and unfortunately we can't see the interior in the photos.
Right.
But we did think, because they fly a lot of these for the presidential squadron, that this was worth doing on the first iteration to try to narrow down the operators. And it does ring up pretty frequently as VH60N, and only sometimes as a false positive. The ones that we don't cover are, for example, this is a Navy search and rescue helicopter that is this. I actually call this one my white whale because I haven't seen it myself, but I see it in people's photos, and then I run out the door trying to spot it. But I think it looks so cool to see a white one. You're just like, what is that?
So you are Ahab in this.
Yes, yeah, always in search. So this is also an H60, and I think that this is kind of monking with the livery options in the model a little bit.
Mm.
And then this is an Army, also a VH60N, I believe. But we had been tagging these as an H60, so this actually should get moved to this, except for it doesn't clarify the operator for you, because right now the VH60N, we can say 100% probability that's Presidential Squadron. If we add this, we are, this is the Army 12th Aviation Battalion. So what we're looking at probably doing is merging all of these into H60 or H60 and AUX fuel tanks, and then running a second pass with a different data set that's just H60s of different liveries, and trying to narrow it down that way.
So you should look at the literature for fine-grained classification. So with a lot of bird species and things like that, they are very close to one another. And so you have to look at the detail is more important than the gross. So you should look at some of those where, they have fine-grained classification. That's the Google term to use.
Okay,
Search.
That's
interesting.
Already immensely helpful. I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't claim to be a computer vision expert, but you learn a lot once you start doing it. So that's what I recommend to everybody: get on RoboFlow and make that data set of things around your house.
Yeah. One other suggestion I have is because there are only 19 classes, and I'm pretty certain that you can find high quality models for these aircrafts, for these helicopters, right? There are just 19 of them. And let's say you buy them and create synthetic data, using Unity or something like that, Unreal Engine, you will get enormous amount of data. And then you don't have to worry about, what are the various angles, etc. You could pretty much do whatever you want, right? So that's
synthetic data is a really interesting wrinkle to add to this with Blender, Unity, Unreal, something like that, and then you can just generate all of the different things you need to see or expect to see.
Right, even render cloud behind it and things like that. So it becomes this is very tractable also because these first of all, these are man-made objects, so you will get 3D models for them more easily. They are not like humans. We have hands and things like that, which are completely different. They are very very solid, and the definition is pretty solid. And then the other thing is the background.
Some people have different numbers of fingers, and all sorts of things. Yeah.
And also the background clutter is not that much, right? It is a sky. You have to change the lighting, And that kind of lighting is very easy because we are talking about changing different, times of the day is what you're looking for, right? So that kind of rendering is pretty easy. So you will get high quality data set, millions of images, right, from these 19 models if you can get them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I actually have a slide about 3D models that we have not pursued yet, but it's very interesting to me. And what I'd probably look at doing is doing another data set that has the synthetic models and then kind of pitting them against each other. And that I think would be really interesting, because I love that this is representative. It's built on the data that we're querying it with.
Right.
So
the way to do it would be, first use millions of images in a synthetic data set, and then fine tune using this smaller data set. And then you can get you'll be surprised the kinds of results you can get from that.
Awesome. I know I'm looking at the chat too, and I saw Lewis talking about the Osprey, and the Osprey also kind of knocked my socks off. That was probably one of the things that sent me down this path, as I saw it right over my head, switching into plane mode and taking off into the distance. And I was like, wow, that's...
Yeah, so people might not be aware. So the Ospreys are the final, first really production vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts for government stuff, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, there's another one that's coming out that's going to be, but I think there's two that they're working on, the Defiant, and I forget the name of the other one. One of them is what I think is called a coaxial rotor that has two rotors that spin on top of each other.
Cool.
And then, yeah, it's really cool. And that thing can get going pretty quick too. But then the other one is an improvement on the Osprey. They've had a lot of reliability issues with the Osprey, but as you can imagine, it's a pretty complex system.
I mean, it only took them 30 years and a couple $1 trillion. What do you expect?
Yeah. And we think that those are used in the presidential squadron for press pool and transportation of luggage. I imagine there's a lot of associated things you have to take with you when you're going certain places.
I wonder if they charge you $50 for every checked bag.
Yeah. Dave in the chat also asks about experimentation with thermal imaging cameras and nighttime recognition. Okay, so I'm going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole with this, and I would love to get a thermal camera and see what's possible. But automated recognition, I believe, is a bit of a bridge too far for this project, officially speaking. We have one person who submits to Twitter to our data set from an automatic camera, and he's actually near me, so it's another reason why I wouldn't pursue it personally. But I think once we're serving the DC audience with their questions and answering their questions, and once you get into automation, you are really tracking, you're really surveilling the military, and you're doing so in a way that is not in the service of the public interest. What we're doing right now, everything can be tied to a specific request of a resident who is curious about that object in the sky. And I want to keep it in that theme.
And it's, as American citizens, we have a right to know what is overhead. I just think that's fundamental. That's not controversial to me whatsoever.
But you may not have a right to train something to capture everything that's overhead and catalog it. I would have to look at the laws, and it's probably kind of an evolving legal theory at this point.
Well, if we see you in the news, then we'll know.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me be the guinea pig. I appreciate it.
Hey, we didn't call ourselves Helicopters of DC. That was you, man.
Yeah. No, I own it. But yeah, there are certain things that I'm not going to do, but I encourage all of you to do it. And our data set is well, I don't encourage you to do it. I don't encourage you to do it.
Yes, please walk that back.
Okay. So we have some other fringe cases. This is the same operator, the Air Force 1st Helicopter Squadron, known as the most annoying helicopter in DC. And this is by the way, a Vietnam era Huey. So it is loud. It's probably the only one that is, reliably human perceptible, the difference from not seeing it. It is so loud and so thwoppy. It's like thwop, 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 thwop. So you can imagine having.
So you don't have to look
Vietnam
up
movies
to know which one it is. Is that
That's
what you're
correct.
saying?
And actually, you can submit it to our data set by sound and just tag it as a UH1N. So, I mean, whether or not that opens up false positives, we can't check the data that doesn't have photos. But I trust, at least with these, that it's pretty reliable.
So you're just sitting at home and you hear this thwop, 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 and you're like, that boy coming.
Yep. Submit to Helicopters DC. We'll take your data. But I do say that's another thing to say, like, that we serve the public interest. What I like to tell people is, if a helicopter flies over the woods and no one's around to hear it, this is the Confucian way of approaching it. It didn't happen. It's not part of our data set. If it didn't, wasn't captured by a human.
Yeah.
So, at least, so these are two different liveries of this. We believe the gray one is actually the commander. It has the commander's name written on it. People have gotten higher fidelity photos of it, which is pretty cool. And has the yellow tail. And these are both classified as UH-1N. And this is another problem, is we have a ton of UH-1Ns. It's the most represented class, and I have a slide about this in a little bit, but that could be throwing off some things, is whenever it sees, before we had a plane or a bird class, if it saw a plane or a bird, it's probably a UH-1N because it's just the most represented class.
So not Superman.
Yeah, no, not Jetpack Man in LA, right?
Right.
So these are a couple other fringe cases, same type, different operator. In the first example, this is a Park Police B06, and the second is Chopper 4 Brad. This is our news station, Channel 4, and Brad Freitas is the reporter on board there, and he's on Twitter, and we have a little more about that coming up as well. On the other end, this is a frequent Medivac EC-45 on the lower left, and a militarized version of it that's a UH-72. So again, trying to keep this data set in types so that other people can use it in other regions. Yes, UH-72 is classified as a different type, even though it is largely just a different livery in this case. But again, things we would like to have a separate data set to, or fine-grained tuning to get to the bottom of. Here is the class balance, as I mentioned.
Your slide, I think your slides froze up here.
Oh. Let's see.
Yeah. We'll take down our overlay and.
Should I refresh?
Go ahead and refresh. I'm going to briefly, while you're doing that, we'll take this moment to remind everybody we are taking suggestions for the as of yet unnamed studio cat. As you can see here, the cat recently went through a texture upgrade, so it's about 30% less creepy, I think. But it's still our studio buddy. Please send those suggestions to newsletter@opencv.org. We will read the best ones on the air. Go ahead and post them in the comments as well if you have them wherever you're watching, and we'll read your suggestions from this week on next week's show.
So Phil, you had the option of choosing cute cats and others. You chose this cat.
I didn't choose the cat. The cat chose me.
I love this cat. So this is what I was saying, just so you get the visual. Same type, different operator in this first case, Park Police and a news helicopter, and in the second case, a Medivac and the militarized version of a UH-72. Different livery, different operator, different type in this case. So we have some decisions to make going forward about these things. Here we have our class balance. So like I said, this is representative of the DC area for sure. UH-1Ns, the Air Force, way overrepresented, along with H-60s, the Army, the Army National Guard, largely. So it filters down from that. What we've only in the recent couple months, we've seen a couple CH-47s, which are the Chinooks that have dual rotors, but in the opposite configuration, long ways. Big boys, basically. We've seen a couple of those, and so since we only have a couple, the data set is pretty short on those. So we could look at adding other people's spots from other areas on that potentially. Let's see. I was going to talk about 3D models. Definitely, there are some good ones out there. And I had talked to a military contractor who I'll leave nameless, who had said this is how they were looking at doing it, and rotating it along all of its axes and taking snapshots of the silhouettes and even obscuring parts of it so that they could look at just the tail boom and just the front end and just the wheels.
Right.
So that's very interesting to me. We'll see. That seems like it'll be a time-consuming process, but I'm interested in 3D stuff, so that could be a good learning experience.
Well, if you have a model, then you can script it, right? You can get all these images.
Yeah.
You can script it, and the location and everything. Yeah.
You can just say, rotate it 15 degrees, turn the exposure down to 1%, et cetera, et cetera. Set the background sky color to be, orange instead of blue.
Yeah, and I'm an automation guy, so it seems like that might be possible. So this is the next thing that I am looking at, though, which is really fascinating to me, at least. Maybe you tell me if you think this is interesting. Like I said, Chopper 4 Brad flies around, and people tag him and wave at him and say, "Hey, Brad." But we don't know what he's doing until 15 minutes or so after he gets to where he's going and starts circling, and then the news story appears on the local section of the news. Well, what if we could look at these trending news thumbnails and then have a data set that is aerial news stories and could say, well, this is a pretty decent probability that he's looking at rescue workers or golf courses in that case. So just saw rescue workers, water, weather,
power,
fires, traffic, a lot of traffic. Here's like medevac. If you see a helicopter from an angle that we never see looking down, it's some of they're medevacing someone. So I haven't deployed this yet, but also, adding a lot of false positive information or null images about just non-aerial images so that it can tell the difference between those two with some reliability. But I think that'll be really interesting, and then potentially be able to reply to people's tweets and say, well, there's a pretty good chance that he's looking at this right now.
That's really interesting. Also, one note is that I think you have to say the name right. Chopper 4.
Chopper 4 Brad. I like Chopper 4 Brad, but if you live in certain areas, they don't love him as much as I do. One of the more egregious news stories they do, though, is Christmas lights.
Okay.
And I'm like, nobody needs to be circling in a helicopter to cover Christmas lights. Sorry, guys.
Oh, they covered.
So it's like
for that one.
That's amazing. So it's like you're saying it would be Christmas time, and they're like, we're on day 37 of this standoff with the Christmas lights. It looks like they're saying they may take them down by January 1st. We'll be here every day until they do.
It's a little crazier because they actually circle one house until the hit time when they say, okay, guys, the family in this house, look up and wave. And I'm like, A, you could have pre-taped this. And B, this is a fantastic way to make all of your neighbors hate you so badly. Circling helicopters. Okay, so this shouldn't be named demonstration. This is from a previous slide, so I apologize for that.
Oh, good.
But again, you can find our data on the RoboFlow universe, Twitter at Helicopters of DC. We have an annual report we put out. It's looking a little dated at this point, but it certainly tells you more about what's happening with helicopters in the DC area. and my email if you want to get in touch. Again, front-end web developers, we'd love to seeking volunteers. We offer non-competitive benefits. We can pay you in beer.
I mean, that's competitive compared to some places. You're not going to get that down at the Gulp and Blow, I tell you that much.
I'll show you one more thing since I have the screen share still if I'm up. This is our data set, and it's in Google Sheets. Okay. Now Sam hates this because he's trying to traverse Google Sheets with, in a, like, I don't know the headaches that it causes for him. It got to be terrible. But again, a community-based data set, it's nice to be able to share this with a couple copter spotters who are veterans and can look at the data and change the data when it's incorrect. And I was going to pop around and say, so in this comment field, you can see these are my colors I've added for certain visual computer vision results that are correct or incorrect. So let me see if I can find one that's there's a problem we've been seeing now and then. Yeah, so this is an A139 identified as 55%. And this is a presidential VH92, which is the new presidential craft. So, I mean, it may be that we need more than this. I won't lie. They are kind of similar, so I see that. But it's also, there's another class that it gets confused with. So it may just be a case of adding a lot more angles to that. So
yeah, that's what that synthetic data is for, baby.
Yeah. I think maybe just supplementing from certain angles, because we know there's certain areas where you can't see what the tail boom looks like, for instance, and to know the exact dimensions from the bottom would be helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, wow. So heck of a presentation. I learned so much about helicopters and how you're doing this. I'm really, as a Python guy, I'm a back-end developer. I'm really interested in how you're running all this on the back end. Like what are you using to interface with RoboFlow, for example?
Yeah, okay. So I was initially, when it was an ADSB bot, I was running it on a Raspberry Pi. Obviously, that's not the most reliable way to do a project of this scope. So now I'm on Google Cloud, and so we have Google Cloud Compute instances when I want to, duplicate what we're doing and run it in Las Vegas for DEF CON for 4 days. I just create a new image of that and roll it out and change the API keys and some of the geographic features. So that's been a pretty good workflow. And then, it's written in Python. I'm not an expert on Python, but I've learned a lot pretty quickly. And I'm trying to think some of the, so yeah, Python has the libraries for, aviation, well, I guess we're looking at pretty standard APIs for interfacing with RoboFlow. We use GSpread, I believe is what it's called, for interfacing with G-Sheets on Python. And what else? Google Maps API again. So we're a lot in the Google ecosystem. Tweetbee for tweets is the library.
Yeah, big ups to Python. Always love seeing Python projects. My personal favorite programming language, but I think number 2 would have to be maybe BASIC. So I'm an odd duck, I guess.
Oh wow! Did you ever do Real Basic? It's now Zojo.
Long time ago. Not my favorite.
I used to love that. So that's where I'm coming from as a programmer, not an expert.
Well, Real Basic had cool stuff for like UI built-in stuff, right? Like it saved you a bunch of time. Anyway, we'll talk about that off air. Satya?
Well, I was curious how you got interested in computer vision aspects of it. When did you start? After this project, or did you actually do it before this project as well?
So initially, when we were working just with the ADSB data, I was playing with taking the DCA webcam feeds. Somebody, and I don't know where they're based off of, they're not official, People who have a good view, I believe, have put this on YouTube, DCA webcams. And there are like 4 angles, and frequently you can see the helicopters on their frequent routes. And it was possible to do computer vision on those. My data set was very rudimentary at that time, but certainly, you probably could. I actually caught some bald eagles on that as well, which was pretty fun. So the computer vision started early, but then as soon as I was like, we have to crowdsource this and get users submitting their images, that was obvious that was going to be the end game. So yeah, we hope we can keep refining it so that, any person, if you tweet a photo at Helicopters of DC, it will look for helicopters in that photo and it will give you results. So,
Nice.
This is helicopters on demand. I don't have to do it.
Helicopters on demand. There's your pivot. Yeah. So one of the things we do here every week is a special giveaway to you in the audience based on a trivia question from the presentation here. So get ready to answer in the Zoom chat. If you're not in the Zoom chat, you can get there by going to opencv.live. If you have won in the last 2 months, please don't answer and give somebody else a chance to get that free OpenCV course of their choosing. Earlier in the webinar, Andrew talked a little bit about a software package called RTL SDR. What does it do? Oh, wow, that was a quick one. Krunal, it's a software-defined radio. That is indeed correct. Congratulations. Please send one email to phil@opencv.org with the course you would like, and we'll make sure the courses team gets you your free course. Congratulations again. We have quite a few questions here. I know I've got several. First of all, how was DEF CON?
Oh man, I told them it's like I found my family at DEF CON. So I'll be back. Yeah,
that's both terrifying and heartening.
Yeah, maybe not all of them. I have a lot of weird cousins, but I love them too. I love them.
You and me both. So I mean, tell the folks out there a little bit. And you gave a talk at DEF CON. What was that like?
Yeah. So I had submitted this. I keep saying it was on a lark, but it was on a hope and a dream that maybe they would take me. And I actually got the results first from Sky Talks, which is a small group at DEF CON that does non-recorded specifically, which, that could have been a very different talk that I could have given at Sky Talks. And I got that email first, and I started dancing in my room and freaking out. And then I got the main stage results, and they said, we're gonna pay for not for your travel, but for your hotel room and your tickets, and give you a ticket for your friend. And at that point, I was really it's like I couldn't believe what was happening. In a state of disbelief for sure. And it has lasted throughout the whole process. But the whole thing went so smoothly, it's almost shocking. And what I love to tell people is I wrote all of these hacker jokes. I can't wait until you guys get to hear them on YouTube, by the way. But in front of every test audience, they flopped hugely. And I was really worried that no one even understood what the heck I was talking about. And then they got like massive raucous laughter and applause at DEF CON. So I think I nailed the comedy aspect.
Yeah, no, I mean the audience really matters. You got to be able to read the room, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
Satya, any other questions here for our guest?
No, not really. I mean, I'm always fascinated how computer vision has become mainstream in the last, I would say, 5 years, where people who are enthusiasts, right, they don't necessarily they haven't spent a lot of time, like not years, on this subject, and still getting very good results, using existing tools and learning as they go, right? So this is a fascinating example of how far computer vision has progressed, and the benefits that we are reaping from all this automation tools like RoboFlow, etc. So I'm really impressed.
Yeah,
Thank you.
likewise. And this, this sort of citizen journalism work is also really close to my heart as well. So I'm really glad we could get you on the show here, Andrew. Um, yeah, Satya, we get. I guess I mean we're hitting up on time. Do you want to take us home?
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you, and this project is fascinating. So thank you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, folks. So couple notes here at the end. There apparently is another OpenCV competition starting up. You want to give a little bit of details about that before we let them go?
Yeah, so there are two tracks to this competition that we are early next week we are going to announce, and basically there is an OpenCV core competition where you could use OpenCV tools and everything, solve any problem of your choice, and it basically doesn't have it's not a two-step competition like we used to have before. It's going to be you tell us what the problem is, and even though it doesn't need any approval because your final is due after a few months, but
Hmm.
if you give us a proposal, then we will be able to give you feedback on how to improve your chances of winning. So that's one track. The second track
Hmm.
is the spatial AI competition, which includes OAK Pro. So it is OpenCV AI kit with Depth Pro, similar to the OAK Lite we have. It's similar form factor, and there the challenge is to improve the depth estimate of that particular camera. And the idea is that because this OAK Pro also has neural inference capability, can we actually use neural networks in addition to the depth estimates that we get from OAK Pro to improve the results? So there's a
And
whole bunch
you
of
want to
literature.
remind the people out there what makes it pro.
Oh, the Pro version is that this OAK Pro also has, let's say this is this is the OAK camera, right? But
Hmm.
it doesn't have a dot projector, right? Which means that if you're looking at a flat surface, then it's not going to estimate the depth in that region very well. But
Hmm.
because the OAK Pro has a dot projector, it means that it generates its own texture, and then the stereo cameras are able to triangulate and produce higher quality results. It also has what is called it also has a night vision because we have an LED which you can use as a flash, so you can turn on that LED and
Hmm.
work on night vision. So those are the two things that make it pro, and the quality is
Hmm.
obviously much higher. But uh, but the particular competition is about improving the depth estimate even more by using neural networks, because there is a whole bunch of literature now where you can um, even do monocular depth using a single image.
Hmm.
You are able to estimate the depth. So combine this true depth estimate, which is very noisy, but using neural networks, can you actually improve the results, right? So
Hmm.
that's something I'm really excited about. And in that
Yeah.
competition, in that track of the competition, we'll have two phases. First phase, you send us the proposal and tell us what kinds of algorithms you're using. Make sure that you're giving some literature review so that we know that you will be capable of delivering on this project, right? And the
Hmm.
top 25 teams will get an OAK Pro, and then they will have to implement and submit the final result again in a few months. Now, both these
Sweet.
competitions have $10,000 in prizes total. So so 10,000 plus 10,000. Each track has $10,000 in prizes. 5,000 for the first prize. Second is 3,000, and the third is 2,000. And we'll have six prizes in all.
Excellent. Wow. Sounds like a blockbuster. Another blockbuster.
Yeah,
Um,
it's going to be exciting. Uh,
yeah. There.
and also one little thing. I don't know how many people joined this webinar from China, but OpenCV China is
Mm,
taking a lead on the first track, and so we will publish. We will publish the all the rules and everything in Chinese as well. So if
awesome.
people are we wanted to get OpenCV China was very interested in getting talent from China, and they thought that it was a barrier to entry for them, from people from China, because they are unable to understand the competition and things like that. So they took a lead on this track, and so we will have two versions of the website.
Awesome. Yeah, shout out to OpenCV China. When we say it's a global community, we mean it, folks.
I also want to give a shout out to ArduCam, which has on the spatial AI competition track. ArduCam is helping us in creating the Chinese version of the competition.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, folks, for another episode of OpenCV Weekly, number 70, if you can believe that.
Wow.
I'm Phil Nelson, your co-host with the Co-Most, reminding you to take care of yourselves out there, take care of somebody else if you can, and have a great day wherever you may be.
Thank you all. Thanks, Andrew, and thanks our lovely audience. Bye.
That's right. Enjoy this outro music by the Monster Association. That was a real fun episode. I definitely learned a whole lot of stuff about helicopters. This was much smoother than last week. What do you think, Satya?
Yes.
We were firing on all cylinders this week.
Working with hosts is so much easier than giving a static presentation. I love it.
Yeah. Easier for you. You don't get complaints about how you talk too much.
Yeah, no, let me bounce off some people.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of the webinar. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to tap the little bell icon to be notified when new episodes drop. This week's episode was brought to you by OpenCV Courses. Learn computer vision and AI from the best at opencv.org/courses. If you'd like to be in the audience next week, subscribe to the OpenCV newsletter.